Hi guys, this is Mr. Sinclair. Just going to run through organizational structure just as a bit of a crash course before your GCSE exams to make sure everything's okay. So what are we going to cover? Now you can look at any of the text that I don't talk about. You can look over it in your own time, just pause the video, whatever. But we're going to look at what an organizational chart is, terms like chain of command, span of control, hierarchical versus flat structure, and then good old centralization versus decentralization, all will be covered today. I'm hoping within about 5 minutes, but it will be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Alright, so what is organizational structure? You can read through all this text in your own time, but really it's about how people are organized within a business. We tend to organize people within a business, particularly as businesses get larger and people need to be organized according to functional areas of the business and the job roles within each functional area. By functional area, I mean like marketing, finance, operations, human resources, that kind of thing. How many people work in each functional area and who's responsible for who. So how many staff report to you, for example, if you're a manager, how many staff you have authority over, who do you report to, and so on and so forth. Alright, so here's an example of one, right? We've got the big boss at the top, the managing director. And then underneath we have the marketing director, finance director, operations director, human resources director, and then the various managers, supervisors and executives, shop floor staff, that kind of thing, as we go on down the hierarchy. Managing director, another term really for chief executive. It depends on the size of the organization what the official title is. Okay, you can think about those things in your own time. Right, these two terms are quite important. I'll go to chain of command first of all. Chain of command just means the number of layers a number of levels in the hierarchy, the number of layers of management, I suppose, that messages have to pass through from the top to the bottom of the hierarchy. So if the chief executive says, right, we've got to launch 3 new products in the next 12 months, then how does that information filter its way down through the hierarchy to, say, the production staff in a factory for, say, Sony or a consumer electronics business like that? The bigger the business, the longer the chain of command is likely to be. So think the army, you know, thinking from sort of field marshal, general level down through, you know, colonels and lieutenant colonels, and captains, majors, lieutenants, blah blah blah, all the way down to the corporal and private at the bottom of the hierarchy. Span of control means the number of people under the direct supervision of any given manager. So who are you directly responsible for? How many people are you directly responsible for? Not how many people are below you in the entire hierarchy, but just who are you directly responsible for? Okay, you can look over that. So here's an example of a wide span of control. And this is all relative. There's no magic number, what's wide and what's narrow. In this example, we have a number of subordinates under this manager. And the manager is essentially directly responsible for all 7 of these employees. So basically whatever they do reflects on the manager, and he or she would try to control what these 7 people do and have some oversight of that. Now if there's 7 people that you're responsible for, that would tend to mean that they are fairly skilled, fairly experienced, quite reasonably capable of their job. And also the nature of the work that they're doing is not going to be catastrophic if they make some kind of small mistake. So you're giving them a degree of latitude, maybe to emphasize their creativity and give them some sort of freedom of expression in terms of their work. So maybe if you worked at a graphic design agency or an architect's office or something like that, you would tend to be employing fairly capable individuals, and you give them a degree of latitude in terms of their everyday work, or just a degree of freedom, how they organize their work and that sort of thing. Here's a narrow span of control where you have a director who is responsible for just 3 managers, so it's a much more narrow span of control. This would be, well, this is fairly typical actually. A narrow span of control as you get to the top of the hierarchy is not that unusual. But if you, for example, let's say this wasn't a director, say it was a supervisor, with some apprentices, for example. Instead of director here we have a supervisor, and this could be apprentice 1, apprentice 2, apprentice 3. At somewhere like Thales Air Defence, you make missiles for a living, so obviously you would tend to have a narrow span of control, because if one of the apprentices makes a mistake building a missile, the potential downside is enormous. So you've got to be mindful of that in terms of the level of supervision which is given. You can read that in your own time. Okay, yeah, pretty much what we talked about. Chain of command, again, we talked about this. Here's a worked example. Really, you can read all this in your own time, but it's basically how the information or instruction gets from the top here down to the bottom. Okay, so here's a couple of examples of hierarchical structures. We have a tall structure with a number of levels of management. It probably means that everything's very well organized. It's easy to see who's responsible for who and who reports to who. But the downside would be it would tend to be slow communication because of the number of levels that information has to travel through, which also can make people feel like they're, just employee number 597 as opposed to in a smaller, flatter structure. You maybe have a better sense of team spirit. Okay, like here, for example, where there are fewer levels in the hierarchy, so faster communication, and maybe there's a better cohesion physically, I suppose, between the top and the bottom. Okay, because the team members are not that far removed from the chief executive. Yeah, you can read about that in your own time. Yeah. Okay, last thing I want to talk about, because time is marching on, centralized and decentralized decision making. If we have a centralized decision making process, that would mean, let's take Marks and Spencer's as an example. Head office at Baker Street in London decides, okay, meal deal for a tenner. We decide all of the different deals, the different foods which are going to go into that meal deal every week for all the stores throughout the whole of the UK. And no one gets to deviate from that directive. Whereas that's centralized decision making. All those decisions are made centrally at head office. In a decentralized situation, you would have the individual managers, store managers would have a choice over what sort of products that they offer in their meal deal for £10 every week. So for example, if the store manager at the Bloomfield store in Bangor happens to decide, look, we've looked at our statistics and we know that we throw out 70% of the fish, for example, that we offer in a meal deal every week. So people in North Down just don't eat that much fish. So we're wasting their time offering that. So instead, we should offer, I don't know, chicken wrapped in Parma ham or something nice like that as an alternative. And then that means that we know that we're responding to customer needs much better, so we know we're not going to throw out as much. It's far more efficient. It better serves our customers, so it's good for our customers. It's good for our staff here because they feel empowered because they have had some input in the decision making of the firm. They have some control over their work, if you like. Well, at management level anyway, maybe not for the rank and file stocking the shelves. And also then for the company as a whole, it's better for them because there's less waste, so it helps maintain good profit margins by minimizing waste. Okay, now Richard Branson is in this picture. Number one, because everyone loves Richard Branson, but also because he's a guy who is quite well known for being quite decentralized in terms of his decision making. He would tend to be very hands-on with any new venture that the Virgin Group is involved in, but as time goes on, he tends to delegate more and more and allow the staff who are in charge of that venture to take more and more control over it, whereas he takes much more of a backseat role and doesn't really have as much control day to day. Okay, so that's kind of it, guys. So look through that. Anything you need to ask me about, yeah, email me or call in to see me and ask me about it. Thanks.